Hello and welcome to the Leadership Series. Today I'm going to be your host, so welcome, and we hope that you have a very informative session together with Dean from Oakwood. So we'll wait a few more minutes until we get a few more numbers on board. With regard to what's happening at the moment with MG, I'm pleased to say that, over the past few days we've been seeing record numbers in terms of booking transactions since the pandemic started. So, we're really quite excited that we are now moving very firmly into recovery phase. I think, there's still a lot of international restrictions, but you can see, particularly in Southeast Asia, that these are beginning to kind of break. So, for example, Indonesia is now allowing in foreign nationals for various types of visas. So we're quite excited about this. Domestic market Indonesia, as we know, is moving, pretty well. The PPKM restrictions is reducing. So from MG side, things are moving very well, and we just hope that continues into Q4. And let's all hope for a really good 2022. Welcome to. I see we have Chan Brothers coming in. Brett Henry, hello, from way out there in Thailand. So I guess we'll just wait for a few more people to come in, and then we'll get moving. Okay, so today's leadership series, we're really pleased and proud to welcome Sean Schreiber. Sean is the CEO of Oakwood. Oakwood is a really strong brand within Asia Pacific and even within the United States. So we're really happy that Sean is going to join. Dean is going to join us today. Welcome, Dean.
Thanks, William. Nice to be with you, and thank you for having me on the show. Very excited to be able to talk about what's going on. And I was very encouraged when I heard you say about those positive numbers. I think we all are happy when we start to see those numbers heading in the right direction. And
the exciting thing in Indonesia now is before it was very much leisure market leading the way, but now what we're seeing is the government meetings are coming back. The government meetings then push forward MICE business from the government-related companies, and the whole thing starts moving. Then corporate travel comes back, so we're seeing a lot of activity now. It's very good.
Yeah, it's positive. I think which is interesting because it brings back this whole. I guess the frustration that everybody has is the start-stop nature of what's happening in the travel industry. We're starting, we're opening up, we're closing again, and I think. Once we can get some of that traction and that momentum happening, I think then everybody sees that it's possible to open lanes and take in business again.
Yeah, for me, it was always a question of you get one piece of good news, then 9 pieces of bad news.
That's right.
So it's when we get to the equilibrium where we're going to get more good news than bad news, and I think we're just this past 1 month or so we're at that point. So we see various things going on in the world. Some of it's not positive. But we're seeing more and more kind of positive news about, herd immunity or the fact that, governments are opening up to accept and learn to live with COVID, which I think is the only route out of this. So I see now much more positive than negative.
Yeah. Let's just keep the faith.
Hey, Dean, so you're originally from Melbourne, right? But obviously, you've moved around the world, especially recently, I gather. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about your, journey from when you started your career until, you reached this position as CEO of Oakwood.
Well, yes, gosh, Melbourne. It feels it is a lifetime ago, right? So I did grow up in Melbourne, but I left Melbourne when I was very young. My father was an expat working for a Swiss textile company, and so we were very fortunate in very early in our lives to be exposed to international travel and move around. I actually wanted to be an airline pilot, funny enough, and fortunately enough, my father actually survived a plane crash, but that kind of set me on a different course. And being a young kid, I really didn't have a plan B at that time of what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. And so I remember quite clearly, my father was living in Thailand at the time, and we were walking along the beach, and I'd ask my sister, like, how do I tell my dad I don't want to be a pilot anymore? And she said, just tell him. And so I said to him, Dad, I don't want to be a pilot anymore, after we'd planned sort of that education path. And he said, why don't you go into hotels? And I think I was so relieved that there was an option, and because I didn't have this plan B, I went, yeah, that sounds great. And so that's how I ended up in pursuing a career in hotels. And fast tracking, my brother actually is a hairdresser, and him and my sister-in-law had a salon in Hong Kong at the time, and was cutting the hair of an executive from one of the international hotel companies. And he said, well, what should my brother do? He's studying hospitality over in Europe. And she said, well, look, we're looking for Australians that have studied overseas to come back to Australia, and why doesn't he join us? So got my first job in hospitality after school, and it's been a journey ever since.
So you've gone right through the various different departments, different functions. Obviously to be a CEO, you need to have that kind of 360 degrees of what's going on, business development, owner relationships, all these things.
Yeah, absolutely. It all plays a big part, and I think anybody who wants to get into this industry, or anyone who any of the younger generation is listening, one of my mentors once said to me, look, you must know a little bit about everything, and so the chef can't pull the wool over your eyes when he wants to order a big order, that a little bit about technology, and as you said, the key ones are the owner relations and the staff and guest communications. I think that's got to be part of it, and you only get that through experience.
What's the real secret about Oakwood? Because you've expanded so quickly pre-pandemic that you must have fantastic owner relationships to be able to pick up these properties, whether it be in China, whether it be in America, Asia Pacific. So what's the secret behind that? And
the secret sauce, yeah, gosh, well, can't give away too many secrets, but as you said, look, the thing is, we've been very fortunate to work with very like-minded owners, and it's we say no to as many properties as we say yes in our expansion, because it's really that relationship you have with the owner, the right product, and being able to make sure that you can deliver on what you're promising. It's no good going in and taking a property if you're not going to be able to add value. So our secret sauce is really, as you said, that relationship with the owner, finding the like-mindedness of them, and creating a bit of a hybrid product, for want of a better word. I mean, serviced apartments, the pure serviced apartment side of our business was always kind of the poor cousin to hotels. And I think what we have done, which I think has set us apart globally and allowed our owners to kind of understand how successful this model is to marry or blur that line between hotels and serviced apartments just a little bit, so that when customers stay with us, when customers stay at Oakwood, they have that independent living that they get from a serviced apartment, but they also have the pampering of the hotel environment, being able to call somebody and get services, and not just be left alone with a key and a set of towels. So I think we've created that, blending that long stay and the short stay together. It gives the best return to an owner. So and we've been able to just really ride on that success and grow both in Asia and now in the US, starting to see traction in Europe. COVID's actually helped us a little bit in that process as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a very interesting model, especially nowadays. There's becoming more of a blur between the hotels, service apartments, alternative accommodation. Yeah, it's very interesting to see how you're positioned. Coming, with that long stay guest kind of client profile, and then supplementing it with short stay, maybe on leisure, and so forth. I mean, how did you handle the pandemic? Was that a positive thing?
Well, it's really hard because our industry was hit so hard. So I'd hate to say, it's positive at the expense of other companies and other industries. But I think it did favor us in somewhat. We weren't immune to COVID, of course, right? Particularly that short stay piece, but we were certainly resilient through this whole process. Having that base of that long stay customer certainly helped. But also, as hotels closed, and we didn't take a defensive position. We went actually quite aggressive, and Obviously, our serviced apartments are a little bit more space friendly than probably a hotel room. You can see some of the images popping up now on the screen. They're all self-contained. They have space. They have the ability to live that independent lifestyle. And so we, obviously when people were stuck, they couldn't go back, they couldn't go forward. The serviced apartment model made sense. And of course, if you look at Asia, where there's the accommodation just by sheer size of accommodation, when families suddenly had children, grandparents, both parents back at home, the apartment, whatever size it was, started to get a little bit smaller. So they needed an outlet. And I think we've thrived through this COVID period because we've been able to provide that.
I mean, when you think about it, yeah, we had a lot of the companies in Indonesia putting their staff in isolation or putting them in the key workers, from the offices close to the office. So that kind of accommodation, apartment style would have suited, very, very well. I'm sure.
Absolutely. Well, William, it's funny you should say that because we went from very much a work from home environment in our serviced apartments to a work and live from home environment. So we added that live component because people needed to live somewhere, and as people were moving back to their home countries because of maybe, unfortunately, job movement and things like that, we were able to offer them an alternative to conventional apartment living, right? So I think we did well through this period. And of course, owners also looked at us and said, well, hold on, who are these guys? How come they're staying open when the hotels that I own are all closing? So I think we've also been an attractive business model for an owner.
Yeah, it's quite fortunate. Even at the beginning of the pandemic, I remember in the UK, Accor were kind of opening up their hotels and converting rooms to offices. I don't know if you can remember that, but yeah. I don't believe it got a huge amount of traction. But I remember when they did launch it, they launched it with great fanfare. That a lot of the hotels in UK were going to become offices. But I guess when you have the apartment style accommodation, it just fits in perfectly, right? Yeah. So it's occupancies, weren't broken to the point that you actually had to close down units.
No, the only two properties that we closed. We operate 68 properties globally. The only two properties we closed were mandated by the government, actually in Thailand, to close those properties when they were closing down accommodation businesses in Phuket and Pattaya. They were the only two. Otherwise, all of our properties stayed open. Still are open today. We've managed to maintain all of our staff headcounts at property. So yeah, I think it's certainly been a ride. And you mentioned another hotel company, Accor, just recently. I mean, all of us had to become innovative and creative with solutions. And I think one thing it did, it made us reinvent ourselves and relook at ourselves and really look at what we were doing. We just happened to be lucky that just prior to COVID, we were already down this trajectory of marrying that hospitality and that serviced apartment concept together.
Yeah, I understand that for Oakwood, before you were doing some kind of agency business whereby you handled customers, and sold third-party accommodation, right? Yeah. And I understand that was part of the business, but you did, during the pandemic, you actually, kind of focused and zoomed in on just providing the Oakwood brand itself. Can you maybe explain a bit about that?
Sure. So, I mean, Oakwood itself originated as a corporate housing provider. So in other words, we catered or we serviced the accommodation needs of Fortune 500 companies. When they needed 10 rooms in Bangkok for 6 months, we would go and source those out. So originating from the US, and that's a very common concept in the US. And funny enough, it was actually before COVID that we started on this path of exiting that, because we just felt that it was very unusual. We started that concept because Oakwood didn't have its own properties. But as we started to grow the portfolio out here in Asia and we had our own properties, it just didn't make sense for us to now put people into third-party accommodation when we couldn't control the guest experience for the customer. So we made a very conscious decision just prior to COVID, either fortunately or not fortunately, but prior to COVID, to exit out of that business. And I think, thank goodness we did, because obviously we didn't have that huge liability for us as an organization. to rent accommodation from somebody else, and then that to sit there empty, and we were holding the leases. So we made ourselves very much lease light. We focused on a management concept, grew the portfolio here, continue to grow the portfolio here, and obviously in the US now we're completely focused on this hospitality model.
Okay, and I guess that leads into the fact that now you're expanding the brands. I think you have 7 or 8 different brands, right, at the moment. And how's that progressing? I mean, are they targeting specific types of business, or is it?
Absolutely. I mean, I drove my marketing team batty with creating brands all over the place because they just get used to one and get some traction with one, and then we go, you know what? There's another market segmentation that we need to attract. I think so we do have, as you said, the eight brands at the moment, and I think each of those definitely have its own DNA. But like our business approach, which is always very balanced, we've sort of said, look, Oakwood is our master brand, for want of a better word, right? Each of our products, whilst having its own DNA, doesn't compromise on quality. So we always make a joke here. Oakwood Premier might have 6 towels, and Oakwood Apartments may have 2 towels, but it's the same towel, it's the same quality. Because if you stay in an Oakwood, you should be expecting the same quality. And what might differ is just the quantity. So as you see this slide that's up here now, Oakwood Premier really sits as our pinnacle product. Certainly a 5-star product that we're very proud of. Oakwood Suites and Oakwood Residence caters to more sort of maybe family relocation market. The Oakwood Suites is kind of a converted residential, high-end residential tower that might not have all the facilities of a hotel, but still is a premium product. And we have Oakwood Studios, a very hot, what I always think is a hip, funky brand. It's always funny because when we opened Oakwood Studios, I was expecting people to come in jeans and black T-shirts and all be 25 to 35, but it turned out to be all the older, the millennial-minded team guests that stay with us. And then the one that's really, really interesting is the Unlimited collection that we've just launched recently. And hopefully we can bring up the slide on the Unlimited collection. So what we did, and this is really born out of COVID. Owners that have their own independent brand, they didn't necessarily want to give up their individual identity. And of course, as international hospitality comes to you, we all want property and put our flag on there. But we identified that these independent owners had really cool products and cool properties. We wanted to allow them to maintain that independence and that individuality, but have the sanctuary of a brand behind them so that they could take advantage of our management expertise, take management of our distribution systems and our relationships that we have, like MG Group, for example, and really leverage off that. So we've got 3 properties that we've opened in Singapore under the Unlimited collection. Further expanding that into Europe, we see a lot of interest in this in Europe because you've got some really beautiful, classy individual properties, so it fits nicely with that. So yeah, all a different demographic, all a different kind of experience, but at the end of the day, still a quality offering.
I mean, there's 2 things that kind of interest me is in Jakarta, because you have these different brands, right, servicing kind of different segments of that market. In a city like Jakarta, how many Oakwood hotels can you have? Like we know the traditional hotel brands, maybe like JW Marriott. There's a maximum number that owners are comfortable to have it within one city, right? But with regard to Oakwood, now you have these multiple brands. A city like Jakarta, how many Oakwood properties would you be comfortable with? And don't say 100. I think there's too many.
Right, so that's the number I was going to use. Look, oddly enough, Jakarta, we always laugh that you could probably put one on every corner because obviously the traffic can be a little bit of a nightmare, right? Right. Look, we never like to put too many properties in one location that would be considered competing with each other, right? The idea is to add value to an owner's asset, and if you put one too close to the other, you might start to get some little, some bleed in terms of your customer base. But given the fact that we have the 8 different brands and they target a different demographic, a different market, or a different need, I think you can have quite considerable number of properties in a city like Jakarta. The customer for a studios is definitely different to the customer for a Premier. The customer that's staying in an Unlimited collection is different to an apartments, right? It's all around
my second thing is there's two brands, right? The Unlimited brand as well as the new brand that you have in China, right, with a joint venture. I mean, those are both massive markets, right? So the Unlimited is kind of like a huge potential of owners, right? You mentioned in Europe. And then you have the new brand in China. I think it's
Deluxe.
Yeah.
Yep.
So which one of those do you think is going to drive Oakwood faster?
Well, look, they all have their own development trajectory. We all sort of know how many premieres, how many studios we want. Studios, we really just want one per city. But if you look at Deluxe and the Unlimited collection, the Unlimited collection in itself speaks how many we believe we can have. It's unlimited, right? Because there is just so many great owners out there that could deserve being associated with a brand. So we see that certainly growing globally. Deluxe is only designed for the China market. It's for the affluent Chinese independent sort of traveler that kind of is now looking at China in itself to expand their own business. So Deluxe is really just for China. And when we speak to the owners, Country Garden, who we've created this brand for, they're talking thousands of properties, right? So it probably could accelerate us significantly into China. At the end of the day, of course, Oakwood brand is the one we want to see grow fastest.
But how fast would Deluxe be? Because I know that you had in 2021 in terms of opening, I think there were 7 or 8 different properties that were planned to open, this year, in Vietnam, in Cambodia, I think China. Did these open? Did some of them open, or will they be opening next year?
No, look, COVID did delay some of them, and we've kind of bottlenecked now because what was happening in 2018 and 2019, maybe 2020 even, have all sort of converged on 2020 portfolio. So we actually have 19 properties that we're opening in the next 12 months, right? All going to plan, no more disruption. So, it's getting quite interesting, right? We're almost at opening 2 properties a month over the next year. Which is for us is huge. Obviously, we're sitting at 65, 70 properties now, and we want to grow that portfolio to 150 without including the Oakwood Deluxe numbers into that. How quickly can Deluxe grow? I think in a normal environment when everything is back to normal and people aren't owners aren't being conservative with their own construction and what rolling out of the brand. I think we'll see maybe close to 100 Deluxe properties maybe over the next 3 years. So it's extraordinary.
So, I mean, you mentioned before that, you now focus very much on the property itself as opposed to the agency side of the business, which you no longer do. Some companies in hospitality, they actually, manage the property, but they're also moving into distribution. Whereas you're very focused towards the distribution, the product itself. So, how do you manage both of those parts? Because, you add in more content, right? You add in more product, and you need to be able to sell the rooms, right? So, how do you balance between having the product and having the distribution?
Well, look, I think it's almost an equal balance, right? Without distribution, you can't do anything with your product. So we balance it quite similarly. Of course, any hospitality company is going to focus a little bit on trying to drive as much of the business through our direct channels, right? But I think it's very, very important to work closely with the different distribution channels, and we see it. We're always working out how we can best work together. There is a number of them out there, as we all know, and there's a lot of options for consumers to go through those different channels. But I think it's really important that we're all working together. I mean, at the end of the day, it's beneficial for all of us to drive. And owners always ask what your system delivery is, and that comes through the distribution. So it's a nice balance. Obviously, the MG Group, which kind of brings dynamically us to the right customer. I think that's the kind of what we're looking for from any distribution platform.
Yeah. So in terms of the mix, is the majority, I'm sure, is direct, right? Direct from the corporate companies, especially for those long stay guests. That must take the the massive chunk of the business, right?
Yeah,
and then
that's a focus, mate.
And then the other partners like the OTAs, they're filling in the gaps, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's also, as you mentioned, the long stay versus the short stay is also different in terms of, what channel, how they come through the different channels, right? So I think people on the longer stay don't necessarily come through distribution channels. They kind of do their shopping and come online and go direct. But so it's interesting. It's changing. It's always evolving, right? So it's very an innovative space.
But how do you see that landscape? The difference between the hotel, the service apartment, and then the alternative accommodation, the Airbnbs, or the apartments that are available online for rent. How do you see that whole thing moving forward?
Well, if you take Airbnb, for example, I think, we always get compared to Airbnb, and, they're not really a product, right? They're a distribution platform, for want of a better word. They aggregate all the accommodation, and we sometimes use our some of our inventory on there as well, where we're allowed to do that. So, I think that we're all in our own space. I think we're all doing our thing. I think we're all, there's enough of the pie. Maybe before COVID, there was certainly enough of the pie for everyone to play a role in this. But I think right now it's working out how we can all work collectively to drive the business.
I mean, I have one question. When you say the pie is big, it's specifically for the corporate market. We've seen a lot of articles in the past few weeks, and indeed before that from Bill Gates, when he mentioned that the corporate travel market is going to be like 50% down, and full stop. Half of it's not coming back, whether that be because companies are rationalizing because they've accepted online meetings, or they just have to take better control of their travel budgets. So is that going to really impact you guys, or?
Well, interesting enough, what we see in the corporate travel market space, we feel that the short stay is getting longer and the long stay is getting shorter. And that is really our sweet spot. Because people, when they travel now, they're gonna stay a little bit longer. They're not gonna just come for 1 or 2 nights anymore. I think because of, particularly if these restrictions are still in place, and you want to get the biggest bang for your buck when you actually do get on the road, right? Given that you may be reducing the number of times you travel. So we.
I get you. So instead of going to Singapore like 6 times a year, maybe I'm going to go 3 times. But when I go there, I'm going to do all the meetings that I would have done on the other 2 visits.
Exactly, you consolidate those trips. And on the other side, you're not going to have massive relocation. I think the people that come in and are relocating for 2 years with family and kids and all of those things. I think that's going to become more project work rather than go and move the whole family over. You go in for 6 months, you stay in a service department, you get the project up and running, you go back home. So that's exactly. It's playing into our business model, which I think is exciting for us as Oakwood.
Okay, I mean, look, that's very interesting, and it's very exciting for you, especially, to see that kind of those changes happen, but they're kind of falling in your lap in a way. But you're already there, right? It's very, very interesting.
Exactly, and I think that's what it's all about. It's about taking opportunity and running with opportunity. And we always talk about what we want our customers to say about us, what we want our owners to say about us, and what we want our staff to say about us. And it all comes back to being able to take opportunity and turn it into good positive results.
Yeah, we've done that pretty much as we've moved along. Definitely with our corporate room deal business. That. They've been taking every opportunity with their corporate company to service them, whether it's providing medical kits for the corporate company because they're not booking hotel rooms, or providing isolation stays. So I think through the pandemic, companies, businesses, hotels have had to, really adapt. And I think if we can keep that open mindset as we move out of the pandemic through recovery, and then, having that experience can put a lot of companies in really good footing to be, much more nimble and adaptable, as the market moves. Because one thing's for sure, the market is moving and it is changing, at a far greater pace than throughout history, right? As we move forward, things happen faster. The changes happen faster as well.
Absolutely. Well, and you're absolutely right, William. And what we've adopted a policy or an attitude here that we can continue to blame COVID for lesser results or worse results than previous years, but it's like when petrol prices go up, everybody complains about petrol prices, and 3 weeks later, that's the new norm. We are in the new norm, and now we have to operate within this norm and find different ways of creating revenue streams and different business opportunities. So it can be doom and gloom, or it can be let's get on with it and let's find how to make money for our owners.
Oh, that's really exciting. Very interesting. Very exciting that you're looking at it from that positive angle, but not just looking at it, you're actually delivering results, right? Especially for your owners.
Exactly.
So each region is different, right? Which one's been more resilient? Which ones, you've had to make most adaptation or changes, or how are the different?
It's like a golf game. One day you go out and you can drive, and you can't hit your putter, or you can't hit a wedge, and the next day you go out and your wedge is perfect and you can't hit the putter. They're not all working at the same speed, and it changes. It's up and down. We're seeing amazing results out of the Korean market. Pre-COVID numbers are already right through the whole COVID period. They were hitting extraordinary numbers. America, just a huge domestic market, right? So of course there's still a lot of travel going in there. So that's a good market. Singapore, for a small little country, it's done remarkably well in this situation. And I think everybody's probably done a staycation that lives in Singapore. So once those are all out, maybe it's going to change a little bit. But it's really been a roller coaster ride for every country, and I can't put my finger on one that's other than Korea that's really done exceptionally well through this whole period. Okay, they've all had their ups and downs.
Yeah, we've got a few questions coming through, so maybe we'll address that. So, what are the top properties and destinations that Indonesian travel agencies should focus on for their customers when they're traveling to Southeast Asia? So what are your standout properties for Indonesia's source market? We know that Indonesia, for example, they love to go to Orchard Road. When they go to Singapore, they want to stay in Orchard Road, right? Do you have a product suitable for the market or not?
We have a product that is maybe, I'm going to say 150 meters, but I might have this wrong by 100 meters or so off Orchard Road, our Oakwood Studios product, right in the heart of the city. Beautiful property, very funky, cool, hip, like we talked about earlier. And yeah, very popular with the Indonesian market. But equally, our Oakwood Premier in Singapore is doing very well. Also Indonesian market. But if the Indonesian market wants to come to Singapore, I really suggest they try our unlimited collection properties. We've got Wanderlust, Kesar, Ang Siang House, all very cool properties, very unique because they've got a kind of a different heritage vibe to them. So all of them. Send me an email. I'll make sure we get a good deal for anybody coming in from Indonesia.
Yeah,
we want you to get here.
They're coming soon. They're coming soon. Don't worry. Any more questions we have? Just checking through here.
There's one that says, is Oakwood catering towards older guests, retirement market, and medical tourism? That's an interesting one. If I can tackle that one.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. I think well, we do a lot of medical tourism. I think that's a big market. And in fact, Oakwood Studios, the one I just mentioned, is opposite a hospital here in Singapore. So we do cater to that, and we've got a good network with all the medical facilities around most of our geographies in Asia, even in the US. So yes, we do that. We are looking at senior assisted living, but our properties are all they're very hygienic, they're very clean, they're very accessible, accessibility. So we do have a very aged population that stays in some of our properties. Some have been with us for 5, 6, 10 years. Japan particularly, we have a lot of long-standing customers that are sort of probably more in their senior years.
I have another question. Oakwood for me kind of is very city orientated kind of property. It's bang in the city centre. It's a city destination type property, but I understand that your plan, or you will be moving more into the resorts. How are you going to kind of transition the brand to be a kind of resort friendly kind of
well,
name?
it's funny, and the reason we did go into resorts, or looking at resorts, and we're opening a really cool ski resort, one of our first ski resort for the Beijing Olympics, Winter Olympics next year. It lends itself to the type of model that we are. Most people, particularly more, again, we're talking about maybe seniors, who go and stay longer in a property. You don't go to a ski resort for a day. You usually stay for 10 days, 14 days at a resort, whatever. It lends itself to it. One, people want a bit of social distancing, so you can do that again from staying in the service department in a leisure environment. So it just was a natural transition for us. And of course, historically, we have been corporate market focused, but the corporate market has time off as well. And we're in it to make sure that we maximize our occupancy on all of our properties. So it just was a natural transition that in the off corporate season, we should be targeting the leisure business as well. And markets want to go on holidays.
Yeah, I can kind of understand it from the angle of we see like a lot of the hotel chains, the big ones that have the wonderful resorts. Even in resort destinations, they're starting to open up apartment style, accommodation, right?
Absolutely.
We can mention Marriott in Bali. They now have kind of apartment style, which is not necessarily directly on the beach, but it gives you that holiday kind of access or location. So I guess you're moving towards there as opposed to the 5-star kind of full service resort.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Look, at that space, it's the balance between the longer stay and the shorter stay is always going to be a best return for an owner. And you tap into that, be it a leisure hotel, a city hotel, special destination hotel, it's always, there's always a market there.
Okay. I think I pretty run out of my questions already. Is there anything particular that you wanted to mention or to talk about? Maybe something new that's happening?
Well, I think we talk. There's thousands of innovations that are out there now as a result of this. I think my team has been brilliant throughout this whole thing. I talk about the fact that medical professionals, caregivers, deserve all the accolades that they should receive for being on the front line of this COVID pandemic. But I think right behind them is the hospitality industry. Our teams, they didn't work from home. They were in the properties, checking in customers, no bias. These people in front of them could be carrying the COVID virus. They didn't ask questions. They were simply behind a little perspex sheet. And I think they are the hospitality industry, be it service departments, all the hotel guys, they are really the unsung heroes of this whole COVID. And I just shout out to everybody in the industry who's kept it going, who's kept the faith, who stayed by through this pandemic and kept working hard. Makes me proud to be a hotelier.
That's a great way to finish. I mean, we notice it as well. The industry, the hospitality, the travel industry has been probably the hardest hit in terms of the business throughout the pandemic. So let's have a great future, and can't wait to get all the hotel rooms full, all the service apartments full.
Yeah, we want the service department ones. Hotels have had a good run. Let them catch up again.
And get those pipeline properties, opening. I mean, that would be fantastic news. Anyway, thank you very much, Dean. Really appreciate you joining and being part of MG Group for this. Definitely, we'll have to catch up again in the near future, and we look forward to developing the business as we go forward.
Excellent. Well, good luck to you in the business as well. Thank you for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.